Again, not to say I told you so or that I'm hot and sexy because I'm
Yeah.
both. But this is the truth that, yeah, over the weekend we got confirmation that, as per usual, our reporting has been nails on this thing is ESPN. ESPN, NBA TV, everybody reporting now that there is friction between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, which we told you as much as 4 months ago. But as recently as 3 weeks ago, we were talking about the chemistry in this Jazz locker room has been bad. And it's not the losing that has caused chemistry issues. It is a lack of respect for the guys around you. And Rudy Gobert has been adamant that, he is the leader of this team and that he wants to call guys out. That has not always gone well. Frankly, most of the time it does not go well. And when Donovan Mitchell's out of this lineup, this team lacks that dynamic scoring punch that he brings, Jake. So does it surprise you now that nationally across multiple platforms, people are reporting that there are chemistry issues in the Jazz locker room?
Nah, I mean it was just a matter of time. I think that when you have when you have your two best players on the team, going back and forth and trying to jockey for a position, it seems like you really don't have a best player on the team, unfortunately, as far as culture and the guys in the locker room are concerned. And I think any successful NBA team has a totem pole of leadership, and you've got the guy at the top, and you've got the guy at the bottom, and everybody else in between. And that's just how it goes, culturally speaking, for an NBA team. And I think that Rudy is the classic guy in the locker room who wants to say, hey, I'm a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and I'm an all-star, and I've done all this great stuff, but you're not the person who decides if your team wins or loses games. You're just not. I mean, it's just not of consequence what he does. Does he fill up a defensive stat sheet? Absolutely. Does he make life difficult for the opposing offense? Absolutely. But again, as we've seen at the highest levels, when you're playing great teams, you're not the reason you win or lose. And that's the tough part. Whereas I think, Donovan Mitchell, if Donovan has 10 points an entire night, I think we can all agree that they're going to lose that game. Whereas if Donovan puts up 35-40, they're probably going to win that game. So I just think that, if you're Rudy Gobert, you cannot have a situation where you're going into the locker room and thinking that you can call guys out and do all this and think that there's not going to be consequences, because that's ultimately what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that you want to be Mr. Accountability, but at the same time, you're a hypocrite because you can't be calling people out when you can't even really shoot a basketball. You can't call people out when you don't really have an offensive game. This is an offensive league, not a defensive league, So that's why I say I just think that for Rudy, it's not his place to be calling people out. Is he the core of your defense? Yeah, he is. Does that mean he should be calling people out? Absolutely not. And I think that, you look at all the best players in the league, the KDs, the LeBrons, the Stephs, whoever you want to look to, those are the people that do the calling out. Those are the people that, run the accountability train for their team. And again, as I've been saying, I think this is where Donovan Mitchell really needs to grow. This is the part of his game that's really got to go up a notch, because until that happens, he's not going to be on a team that goes to the NBA Finals. He's just not. And that's what I think he's got to realize.
But is that the end all be all for this ball club? Is it championship or bust? And frankly, when you look at what's been going around and you look at what we've been telling you is happening with this team, one of the things that's very clear is Danny Ainge is trying to make deals. And I think this is the other thing that came out over the weekend. Again, we were able to confirm that the Jazz are trying to make a Marcus Smart Richardson deal in Boston, and they just don't have the parts to get it done. Because what you're hearing is that Boston is talking to two teams prominently. One of those is the Atlanta Hawks, who are said to be on the verge of offering John Collins to Boston for Richardson and Marcus Smart. And I just don't know how, if you're the Boston Celtics, you turn that deal down.
Yeah.
That would be an incredible upgrade for them to pair with Jason Tatum. And you look at the way Jaylen Brown's playing, you add John Collins to that. I mean, that is a very formidable triumvirate in Boston, especially in the Eastern Conference. I look at what Minnesota is said to be willing to give up to get Marcus Smart. They're willing to give up Malik Beasley. Now, do they throw McDaniels in to make that deal done? Well, so far they haven't. But if I'm the Boston Celtics, why am I going to make a deal with the Utah Jazz when I can go to other teams like Atlanta and now Minnesota and get younger pieces as well as draft picks for Marcus Smart and Richardson. I just don't know why you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And this all goes back to what we've been talking about with the Jazz. They just don't have the pieces to make a deal to improve themselves. So what happens is you hear about a Montrezl Harrell deal where the Lakers would love to get Montrezl Harrell back, but they don't have a first-round pick to get in on. So, hey, well, maybe the Jazz are, who I'm told are now willing to give up future draft capital, which they hadn't been willing to do, because I think they thought they could take some of these pieces and make a deal and hang on to their draft capital. Well, things have changed now because they realize Danny Ainge, I think, and Justin Zanuck are out there trying to make deals, and they just don't have the physical humans to make a deal happen in the NBA. So now it looks like the Utah Jazz are going to have to give up future first-round picks, which, by the way, I don't know why you don't do that. And the reason I say that is you're not going to win now. You're not going to win now. And if you stay the course, you're not going to win next year either. And if you don't win next year, it just gets a whole lot worse because you're paying the luxury tax repeatedly. And to me, it makes no sense to say, well, I don't want to give up my draft pick, so I'll be a repeat offender of the luxury tax. That doesn't make any sense. So what you have to do is you have to unload your most valuable pieces. And those valuable pieces, those valuable pieces, in my mind, right now on this roster today, are Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson, and I do think that there is an appetite in this league to have conversations about Rudy Gobert. I just don't think that they can make a deal with his contract the way it is now. You're so early in that deal, and the Jazz would have to absorb so much of that contract. It's just not feasible to trade him.
Right.
I do think, though, and I'm told that there are teams around the league who would love to add Rudy Gobert and are willing to see if they can make that happen.
Yeah, and I think that, if you're Danny Ainge in the front office, a Rudy conversation is one you're willing to have, but at the same time, you're not willing to take a beating to make that deal. You're not willing to because remember, the team you're trading Rudy to has got to take on all that money. So once again, Danny Ainge is on the wrong side of leverage in these conversations. And so my point just is I don't think that Danny Ainge is going to trade Rudy Gobert, in like as part of like a bad deal, if you will, as part of a deal that sees the Jazz kind of get leveraged out of some value. And so, yeah, I think Danny Ainge I know, based on what we're being told, Danny Ainge is out there doing his job. And I just think, like we've been saying for what feels like probably, not exaggerating, I honestly feel like we've been talking about this for at least 3 months, if not longer than that. Danny Ainge is in that position that is really tough. You don't have a lot of assets to move and to make deals better. The conversations you are having, people are dictating to you, not you to them. So it's just a tough situation right now. But I think that overall, this, bringing it back to the center of the conversation about the relationship between Rudy and Don, I think no matter what they do in the trade front and the transactions, no matter what they do there, it all comes back to this relationship between Donovan and Rudy. And there has to be a solution to that. There has to be a come to Jesus moment, if you will. They've got to get on the same page. They've got to improve the relationship. Don's got to throw him the ball. Rudy's got to shut his mouth. Like they gotta grow up. And I hate saying it that way because it's kind of like condescending, but I almost feel like that's the best way to say it. These two guys just got to grow up. Like just get over the personal bias or like the pride of it all and say, okay, we both want to win. That's not in question. I don't think anybody doubts that Rudy Gobert wants to win a lot of basketball games, that Don wants to win. But I do have some questions about whether Rudy is willing to take, second fiddle to anybody. That's my question.
I think that Rudy Gobert is not willing to back down. And I think what you saw the other night with Donovan Mitchell's return is that when he plays well, this team wins. And I think that Donovan Mitchell is far more impactful. I have no doubt in my mind at all that Donovan Mitchell is the right guy for this team to build around. I think that people around the NBA view Donovan Mitchell as a superstar, and I don't think they view Rudy Gobert as a superstar. I think Rudy Gobert is a second-tier player in this league, and I think most people I talk to around the NBA agree with that. And I think it's because he cannot impact a game offensively. That he has to – Rudy Gobert's best value offensively is when the Utah Jazz don't shoot the ball well. And that is a recipe for disaster.
And we've been saying that for forever.
For a very long
Yeah.
time. And I think it is, I think it's very difficult. I think it is very difficult to believe that Rudy Gobert is a guy that you can continue to center this team around, because I just I can only say it so many times. This team is built around the wrong guy.
Yeah.
You're built around Rudy Gobert, and that's why you're so inconsistent.
Yep.
That's why when you have heat in the locker room, because understand this, Rudy Gobert knows or believes that he's the most important player to this team. But I think Donovan Mitchell knows this is his team. He just isn't willing to step in and lead this group. And I don't know if that's what the center of the issues are in the locker room. I don't know if that's why Rudy Gobert has what was, the word that was used to me the other day was an obsession with calling guys out. And it creates a lot of frustration. And Jordan Clarkson is hearing, hey, you shoot too much, and from his teammates and from his coaches is, hey, keep doing you. You're doing your job. You have a job to do. And Rudy Gobert, one of the guys he talks about the most is Jordan Clarkson. Hey, you need to make the extra pass. Hey, feed me in the post. Hey, that's a bad shot. Hey, you need to not pout. Hey, you need to get back on defense. And while all that might be true, I don't believe that Rudy Gobert has the respect of his teammates to be in a position to call them out, especially when he wants the ball and he complains about not getting the ball with his back to the basket. When they give him the ball, it does not generally end well if he is in a position where he has to dribble or make a move to the basket.
Yeah.
So I think that's what the frustration around this team is. And this idea that they don't have the pieces or the peripheral parts like draft capital or money to go and make a significant deal that would change the direction of this club is even more frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're in this vicious cycle where the only way to get out of your current situation is to make a foundation shifting trade.
Yes.
And I think they're rapidly coming to that realization.
Mm-hmm.
They want Marcus Smart. They would love to make a Marcus Smart trade with Boston. They just can't get it done because teams like Atlanta, who have drafted exceptionally well, and teams like Minnesota, who have drafted exceptionally well, have these young parts that are valuable across the league. John Collins is a guy that is very valuable across the league. You even look at Philadelphia. Philadelphia has what is supposedly a weight around their neck trying to win a championship with Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons has incredible value around the league.
Yes.
The Philadelphia 76ers are on the verge of getting James Harden. Now, if you listen to Steve Nash, the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, Steve Nash says that's not going to happen. But if you look at the trade wins around this league,
yes,
they're very close to making a James Harden for Ben Simmons deal. That's a foundational change for both of those teams. But I think the realization is both of those teams know they're not better than Milwaukee right now.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia is acutely aware that they have the best big and arguably the odds-on favorite to win the MVP in Joel Embiid, and he's got very little help. And they need the spot that Ben Simmons is currently holding. Can you imagine? We were talking about this. We were watching the Bulls-Sixers game last night.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this. Can you imagine adding James Harden to that rotation? And if you have to give up Ben Simmons and Seth Curry to get that done,
I would.
you would do that.
Yeah, I would.
You'd absolutely do that.
Yep.
And that's the difference. When you're Philadelphia and you have a piece like Ben Simmons, oh, by the way, you also have Seth Curry, one of the best three-point shooters in the league.
Yep.
You put those two guys together, and all of a sudden you can turn that into James Harden? That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
To put the group that's there, and you potentially don't have to give up Thibault. To me, that's a no-brainer.
Tobias Harris.
That's a no-brainer. I think Tobias Harris is one of the first guys they're going to move.
Yeah.
Because I think Tobias Harris is a guy that has medium value around the league, but he's not somebody that's going to make or break you on a championship team. So you can afford to give him up, especially if you get James Harden in return. I just think that if you wind up getting Bruce Brown and a James Harden from Brooklyn, you're in really good position now. You are in really good position.
Yeah,
and
Brooklyn has a lot of guys that a lot of role players that are very usable for a lot of teams, and
They do.
And that's that's one thing that I give them a lot of credit for. Usually we're talking about, the Lakers having a lot of those kind of guys. And the Lakers do have a decent amount of those guys. But, it's usually, this time of year in years past, it's usually, hey, the Lakers are going to do a bunch of deals and, and then that's how they build their championship team. But it's a little different this year. And I just think that, I love the trade market. I love the trade season in the NBA. I love silly season, if you will. But at the same time, again, to take it back, if you're a Jazz fan, remember this. Remember this if you don't remember anything else. All these trades that you're hearing about in the general NBA landscape, the James Harden situation, the McCollums and the Lillards, like all these different situations you're hearing about, all these teams are getting better. All of them, Did anybody notice? The Clippers now have Norman Powell. Anybody notice that?
Yeah.
Just another little role player for them. All these teams are getting better, and the Jazz seemingly are kind of standing still.
How did the Clippers end up in that deal, though? Well, the Clippers ended up in that deal because now reports say that Kawhi Leonard's not coming back this year.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew they had to go and make a deal. So what did they do? They went and did what they needed to do. Now, are they a championship team this year? Probably not.
Well, they have Rocco, though.
No. Anyway, the point is, they went and made a deal that made them better. And so I think that's where the Jazz are in a real paradox, because you have two guys who seemingly don't. I'm not going to say that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert don't like each other. They just don't coexist well on the same team.
Yeah.
And I think that you have a deal where you're stuck. You're running in mud right now if you're the Utah Jazz, and frankly, I don't know how you fix that.
Well, I mean, the way it's a painful process. I mean, when you're in this kind of situation, you have to set a clear direction. Okay, who is the guy we're building around? Obviously, as we've talked about on the show, we would choose Donovan over Rudy, every day, twice on Sunday, right? I mean, that's just the direction we would go. But
I haven't talked to anybody that would choose Rudy over Donovan.
Right.
Not one person.
And so the point I'm getting to is, how do you fix this situation? You literally, and I'm not being cheesy sports guy or facetious, you literally have to blow the thing up. You have to make huge foundational trades to basically change the tide of your team. So, you got to do a Rudy deal where you get your ass handed to you in return, but you're committed to getting that contract off your books. I mean, that's the kind of deal that you're going to have to do to put yourself in a position where you can start making other deals to get better. And that's the tough part. Those decisions are what ultimately what the fan base and what Ryan Smith will remember.
Yeah.
Hey, what did Danny Ainge, what major move did we make? Did we trade Rudy over the summer? Because the Rudy deal wouldn't be a deadline deal with his situation.
I don't think
that would
so.
be a summer deal.
Yeah.
But were we able to move that contract in the summer, and did that allow us at next year's trade deadline to do some things? Those are the type of moves that get you out of this situation.
Well, and I also think you're starting to look at guys like Bojan Bogdanović, Jordan Clarkson. Okay, they're in a different group. Like we know those are not foundational pieces. But when you get to Mike Conley and you get to Donovan Mitchell and you get to Rudy Gobert, those are tough trades to make, because now the identity of your club changes dramatically. If the Utah Jazz went out and traded Mike Conley today,
mm-hmm.
that's a completely different ball club now. Because now Trent Forrest and Jared Butler all of a sudden are thrust into major minutes.
But this is the question then. Is that a bad thing? Should we be, not that you are, but I think a lot of people have a lot of fear around, hey, these young guys playing the lion's share of minutes and developing, and like we're going to have to suck for like 2 seasons to get good. And I'm telling you, as long as Don's on board with it, that's the route you got to go. You have to fix your money here, man.
Yeah.
You can't keep operating this way.
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. I think that's what I would do, because I'm the guy that wants to win. I think you run in 5-year cycles. I want to win 3 rings in 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to do that. And you look at the fear in, what's the narrative from the fan base? Well, guys don't want to come to Salt Lake City. Guys are not going to play for the Jazz.
Yeah.
Well, you're not asking them to make a decision. You're not giving them a choice. You're trading for them. And when you win, it's shocking, but Guys actually want to come to Salt Lake City and play because you win.
Again, look what happened in Phoenix.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an interesting parallel because you have a really good situation in Phoenix now with one of the most disliked owners in all of professional sports in Robert Sarver. But what's the difference? You have Monty Williams as your head coach who's well-respected and well-liked. It doesn't hurt that he's black. And it doesn't hurt that Chris Paul signed on there. And, Devin Booker's turned into a star.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Chris Paul has made him exponentially better. And I look at Mikal Bridges and his growth. By the way, he should be an all-star. I think the guy's one of the best defensive players in the NBA. You look at the way that, Jay Crowder fits in. You look at the way that roster plays together. There's no doubt that is Chris Paul and Devin Booker leading that team.
Yes.
There is no question about that. If Devin Booker speaks, that team listens. If Rudy Gobert speaks, if Donovan Mitchell speaks, I don't know if you listen. And so I ask you, who's the leader of this Utah Jazz team? Try to answer that question. Is there an unquestioned clear leader of this team? Because every championship team has one.
I mean, on the surface, it would be Dom, but I don't think he's there yet.
I don't think he's there either because I think you don't have accountability from the coaching staff to the locker room.
Yeah.
And you don't have a clear set of expectations. And when you turn guys loose and you say to guys, hey, play free-flowing basketball, shoot, hey, if you're open, shoot it, that creates problems.
Yeah.
When you look at who are the best teams in the NBA right now, unquestionably, Joel Embiid's the leader of the Sixers. Giannis is the leader of the Bucks. I don't think there's when you are a good team, when you're the Lakers, that's LeBron's locker room, right? The Jazz don't have one or two of those guys. They don't have any of those guys.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest issue with this team. And it's why the impact that Rudy Gay should have had has never happened here.
Yeah, and I think, Mike Conley, when they first signed Mike Conley, not even when they just re-signed him, but when they first brought him to the team, I think, the sales package and the gift wrapping was that this was a guy that, a veteran point guard that could bring a lot of leadership. And it's like, yeah, yes, is he a floor general when he's out there? Sure. He's leading the offense. He's initiating things. But I just keep coming back to Donovan Mitchell needs to grow up and needs to develop as a leader. I mean, at some point, you have to step in and put yourself out there. Again, you can't in leadership. You can't be scared to just put everyone together and take them where you want to go. Like that's just what you have to do as a star player in the league. I mean, you've got. There's no question that Donovan Mitchell has the respect of the best players in the league. There's no question about it. And it's almost a thing where it's like, Don just needs to get this locker room together. And if you want to do that in player-only meetings or whatever, it just needs to happen. Everybody always said, about Kobe back in the day, well, Kobe was a terrible teammate, and he was an asshole, and he treated everybody poorly. But notice none of this stuff ever happened. There was two names on those great Laker teams, Kobe and Shaq, and that's it. It was everybody else. And you don't have that dynamic here.
But how did they get back to winning? And Kobe and Shaq's a really good example. I would draw a parallel between what happened with Kobe and Shaq and what's happening with Rudy and Don. It is very difficult to have two alpha dogs in a locker room, right? And I can tell you firsthand, Shaq and Kobe were both alpha dogs. They traded Shaquille O'Neal. They sided. And why did they do that? Because they knew that this was a guard wing league.
Yes.
And it has not changed. It's never gone back to a big league, right? So you can sit here and call me a fool and whatever you want.
You're casual.
Yeah, you can call me casual. That's fine. This team should side with Donovan Mitchell. He's a better player. And frankly, he's the future of the NBA. He is the present and the future of the NBA.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. All right, let's get your comments in here. Tawa Unga says, Ayo, morning, guys. What's up? Good to see you. I'm probably pronouncing that name wrong.
Yeah.
Tanner Plummer, good morning, Tanner. No longer a casual.
Yeah, no longer casual. I mean, dude won the Xbox.
Yep.
Just saying.
Says, morning, guys. Thanks for the Xbox. Thank you. Appreciate you. Why is Monty dying from coughing, man? I had a great weekend of no coughing.
The coronavirus.
I coughed very little this weekend. Felt great. Feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Go to project the old jugular and
Vexes me.
I am terribly vexed. There is no
Have
doubt.
the vexed.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Rudy Sanchez, what's up? The Blind Swordsman DS. I don't know why I'm dying. John Jackson says, go check out King Taco out in L.A. I have been. I have partaken in the sauce. Edgar Garcia says, good morning, my boys. What's up, Edgar?
Hello.
Jeremy Bolton says, didn't Tony Jones report that there wasn't any friction between them? No, I believe what he said was that he and Rudy are... He said something to the effect of that Rudy and Donovan don't hate each other. And that because Donovan was asked about this, if memory serves, Donovan was asked about this and said everything's fine. But what would you expect Donovan to say? I mean, we're not the only ones reporting this anymore. I mean, if it was just us and it was like, well, you know.
The funny thing that happens is we'll be out in front of everything. We'll say and report things, you know. And then we get called idiots and fools and casuals. And then 2 weeks later, typically, everybody else starts reporting it. So, whatever you want to say, man. I'm just telling you. Rudy and Don don't get along. They don't hate each other, but they don't get along.
They just don't coexist well.
And until those two get along, this team's not going to do anything. This team is going to live in mediocrity. They're going to win a lot of games in the regular season. They're going to beat bad teams. They're even going to beat good teams in the regular season. But when you get to the postseason, it is a different beast. It is a different vibe. You have to execute at a tremendously high level to have any chance. And you can't do that if you're not on the same page.
Steve Hambone says, hopefully they'll get their shit together after the break, hopefully. Jeremy Bolton says, from Donovan per Tony, Donovan Mitchell on reports that he and Rudy Gobert are beefing again. No, we're good. That's just not true. Okay, cool.
What else is he going to say?
Mr. E says, don't you think Detroit Pistons could afford Rudy? Him and Cade would be quite interesting. The issue is that, again, if you're the Detroit Pistons, do you want Rudy Gobert to walk into the Palace at Auburn Hills and say, yeah, I'm the best player on the team?
Sorry if you're offended by that.
Rudy's going to walk. Rudy Gobert believes he's the best player on the Jazz. And I'm telling you, he's not. He's not. You can get guys. If this team had, ask yourself this, if this team had wing defenders, how much less of an impact would Rudy Gobert have? I think it would be substantially less. I think if this team had younger, more athletic wings that could defend, and you had a lesser big man, a role-playing big man, I think you're probably better off. I think you are. Now, you love having the Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert. I mean, that he's absolutely valuable in that light.
Let's not beat around the bush, dude. He is in a prime environment to win Defensive Player of the Year awards.
He is.
Like, let's not.
He is.
I hope everybody's on the same page with that. The guy literally gets everything funneled to him, and all he does is jump and protect the rim. That's what he does, and he
does it really well.
Yeah, like, it's not a criticism of him. But again, if you take Rudy Gobert and you put him on a team that's already good, like, let's say, you know, I mean, what team do you want to look at? Like, if you put him on the Clippers, let's say, I mean, he's not going to do with the Clippers what he does for the Jazz, because the Clippers are a better team.
Put him on Memphis.
Put him on Memphis.
Memphis
exactly.
is one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. He's not going to win Defensive Player of the Year. This team is built to make him win Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And I think that isn't a knock or a downgrade to him. They quite literally do not have somebody that can keep his man in front of him. Like, on the perimeter of this defense.
Yeah.
Who's the lockdown defender that can keep a man in front of him?
Young guys.
Like, not in their starting five.
Yeah, not in their starting five.
Right? If you think about anybody but Rudy, even Don struggles defensively, and it's more effort and want to, I think. But if you look at Royce O'Neal is not a plus defender anymore.
But wait, I thought he was one of the best, defensive players in the league.
That's why they call him buckets, I guess. Anyway, the point is, you look at Bogey, you look at Jordan Clarkson, you look at Joe Ingles, God rest his ACL. You look at this team, it is constructed to give Rudy Gobert ultimate opportunities defensively.
Yeah.
And the elite teams in the NBA know how to as we've talked about.
Yeah.
So Neville93 says, good morning, guys. What's up? Mo Bamba.
Hello.
Shout out to Mo Bamba.
Yeah, did you see Mo Bamba get absolutely posterized, by the way?
I don't know. Do you have the drop that says shout out to Mo Bamba?
Yeah, can you just, I'm just trying to find it. I got like 50 pages of drops
Shout out to Mo Bamba.
I love when there's pressure on you to play a drop.
Jesus.
And you're over there like, I can see you over there feverishly messing with your
let me
mouse.
pick up like 15 pages of drops here to find the one,
Forrest Gee, good morning to you. Rudy Gobert is the most impactful player on the team.
Are you out of your goddamn mind?
Okay, so when you say that, Forrest, what does that mean? Rudy Gobert is the most impactful player on the team.
Is that from a win-loss perspective?
Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is that night to night, minute to minute? Like, explain that, because I'd love to talk about that. Tanner Plummer says this is probably a dumb question. Well,
guys.
Guys. He says, LOL, well, it's on brand. Exactly. But do you guys think Ainge knows that this team is built around the wrong guy? Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
They've told Donovan Mitchell, we're going to build this team around you.
Listen, you got to remember Danny Ainge's history. And, if you haven't been watching the league for a long time, you very well could have missed what he did in Boston. I mean, you're talking about a guy in Danny Ainge who went and made major, like, franchise-changing moves to put together a big three when LeBron was in Miami. I mean, remember that. Like, you got to remember he had to answer the bell when the East was difficult, and he did that. And I think Danny Ainge is very aware of this team's flaws and its shortcomings and why they're losing. You think Danny Ainge hasn't been watching this team for probably a good 2 years? You think him and Ryan Smith haven't been talking about this for a minute? I mean, Danny Ainge has been paying attention, and I think that the only thing holding Danny Ainge back is the fact that he doesn't have draft capital to make trades. If he had draft capital, this team would already be different. I can tell. Like, I'm very confident in that.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Rough Official says Gobert averages 16 points and 15 boards and is the NBA's top defensive player, arguably.
He's not the NBA's top defensive player. He's not. He may win Defensive Player of the Years, but you put him up against any team that has playoff aspirations, and he's gonna get leveraged. And again, here's the thing with Rudy, and this is just the truth. I'm not even hating on your comment there. The fact about Rudy Gobert is that he lights up a stat sheet. Oh, he's averaging 16 points, 15 boards. How can you say he's not the most impactful player for the Jazz? What does that mean in the win-loss column? What does that mean for winning championships? What does that mean for the most important portion of the NBA? Winning the game, right? That's why, again, it's the famous quote, right? You play to win the game. Why are these guys going out there? Right? To win the game. So when I look at Rudy's contribution, it is very clear. We've been saying on this show, he started this trend like 6 months ago. When the Jazz shoot really poorly from three, Rudy has monster nights in the stat column. Right? He'll put up like 25 and 18. Like, he'll go ham.
And there is no doubt that Rudy Gobert is the best rebounder in the NBA. When you pull down 25% of your team's rebounds, that's freaking amazing. So there is no doubt that Rudy Gobert is,
But I'm talking about, I want to be really clear. I'm not talking about, like, when we say, okay, he's the best defensive player in the league, or he's an elite rebounder, or he's this or he's that. When we say these, when we give him credit for his abilities, when I'm having this conversation, I'm talking about it from a championship perspective, because that's the stated goal of this team, to win championships. The stated goal of this team is not, like for the Pistons, the stated goal is to try to get better to make the playoffs, right? For the Cavs, it was to make the postseason. The stated goal for this team at the beginning of the year was to win championships. Why did you bring Mike Conley back? Right? We're going to run it back. Hey, we got hosed in the playoffs. We had injuries. Don was hurt, and that's why we weren't able to make it. Let's not forget where we started at the beginning of this season. We started with, hey, we're bringing Conley back because we want to run this back and make one more run to try to get to the NBA Finals.
Yes.
So when we're talking about Rudy and his contributions, it's not from the perspective of, hey, can he fill up a stat sheet, or is he the defensive player of the year? Can he do all these great things? Yes, he can do all those great things. 100%, he is a phenomenal defensive talent. There's no doubt about that. But when I talk about winning a championship, Rudy Gobert's not a championship NBA basketball player. He's not a championship Euro player. He's not a championship Olympic player. And the reason for that is the same across any league. He does not have an offensive game. That's the problem. Basketball is an offensive game, not a defensive game, right? That's the issue, especially in the NBA.
And I think when you look at the best defensive player this year, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, Draymond Green probably has the best case because they're not nearly the defensive team without him. But I don't think there's any doubt it's Giannis right now. I mean, the guy without Brook Lopez and the numbers he's putting up across all defensive categories. I mean,
but like Giannis and Draymond are great examples to compare, to Rudy. I literally think Rudy Gobert could be an MVP if he could just shoot a baby hook. If he could just have the ability with his left or right hand to back a guy down and go up strong. If he could do that, I legitimately think the guy could be an MVP candidate.
Which is why I don't understand why everybody's like, oh, look at Rudy shooting threes in pregame. I don't care about his three-point shooting. I much more care about his ability to dribble the basketball without turning it over. That is a much more valuable skill to this team than shooting three-pointers. I mean, it just, to me, it just, yeah.
And then everyone's going to say, okay, well, look at his shooting percentage. Well, yeah, his shooting percentage is going to be high because all he does is dunk.
But he's not a star. Like, and this is Ruff's official point is, but he isn't a superstar.
Exactly.
It's great that he averages 16 points and 15 rebounds, but no, he's not a superstar because he does a lot of things that downgrades him. The obsessive whining to the officials, which has been a point of contention in the Jazz locker room.
Yes.
It just is overwhelming. He has a reputation as a guy that argues every single whistle, pro or con. Even when he gets a call, he's arguing about a play that happened 2 possessions ago. Like that to me is a huge downgrade to him. I look at how limited he is offensively. If the Jazz shoot well, his numbers are far less.
When the Jazz shoot well, he's a 12-9 guy. 12 rebounds, 9 points. That's typically what he throws up.
The other thing is, with all due respect, again, I look at where Rudy is against younger, smaller, athletic teams. It makes it difficult to argue for him as a superstar when he struggles against the Minnesotas, the Houstons, you look, who's a team that needs a big? The Bulls or the Brooklyn Nets have no size. He should terrorize those teams. And he doesn't because he's not an offensive force. So, look, Rudy Gobert has an incredible impact on games. There's no doubt about that. He is an impactful, important player that you cannot build a franchise around. That's the bottom line, and this team is built around him.
Yep.
Let's see. Jeremy says, I'm fully confident that Ryan Smith, D-Wade, and Ainge are doing everything to give me a comment dump possible to make the best possible changes. Don't overlook Justin Zanuck's impact in this process because Danny Ainge has connections and contacts, and he is absolutely working the phones, but Justin Zanuck is the guy out in front here. And I think Dwayne Wade has a smaller impact. I don't think there's any doubt that Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck are working together to try and make trades. Yeah. And I think that they really would like to make the deal with Boston. They just don't have the parts to get it done.
Yeah.
And Boston knows what Marcus Smart is worth, so they are not going to settle for a second-tier deal. I really the thing that stands out to me most is that I'm told the Jazz are trying to be a third team in a bigger trade. I think that's where right now they're stuck. Mm-hmm. That's who they are right now. And that's why I say the Washington trades are huge for the Jazz because I think Montrezl Harrell is going to wind up back in the Western Conference. And I think there's a real good chance that the LA Lakers would like to reacquire Montrezl Harrell. We'll see if that happens. I don't know. But I think that you're gonna see a big when a Westbrook type deal goes down, when a Ben Simmons deal goes down, mm-hmm. and you have to move multiple large salaries, that's where you're going to get multi-team deals that the Jazz can get in on, because they just can't. They've tried, man. They have really tried to make a deal. They've really tried, and they just don't have the parts to get it done. They don't. I think Philadelphia, honestly, I think that trade could be the best opportunity for the Jazz to move Bojan Bogdanović because I think Philadelphia would love to have Bojan instead of Tobias Harris. I think that they would really like – it's a downgrade defensively, but Bojan Bogdanovic has shown that it's not a fluke that he's getting to the basket now. And his ability – he is starting to leverage his ability to shoot the three to create opportunities to drive to the basket.
Yeah.
And when you add James Harden to that mix – what that does is create a heck of a lot more knockdown three-point opportunities. They don't have a guy that you can stand on the wing in the corner and shoot a three like Bogey can.